The engineer laughed at him, called it impossible. But when the mechanic fixed a military engine with nothing but instinct, she didn't just lose the bet, she fell in love. This isn't a movie. It's real. And it all started with one bold challenge. It was the kind of day people remember forever. The sun burned over a dusty construction site in rural Texas. Cement trucks rumbled in the background, and steel beams shimmered under the scorching heat. But everything had come to a stop. Workers stood in a circle, staring at the lifeless heart of the operation, a massive, military-grade V12 turbodiesel engine, designed for power but now as dead as stone. Tools lay scattered. Hands rested on hips. And silence filled the air like a thick cloud of failure. They had tried everything, rewiring, reprogramming, even calling tech support. Still, the engine wouldn't budge. The pressure was rising. Every hour the machine stayed down, tens of thousands of dollars were being lost. That's when Sarah Morgan stepped out of the trailer. She wasn't just any engineer. She had an MIT degree, worked with defense contractors, and was known for solving problems with cold logic and even colder confidence. Clipboard in hand, she scanned the scene, then the engine. Her eyes narrowed. "This thing's fried," she said, more to herself than anyone else. "You're going to need a full ECU replacement. Nothing we can do today." And that's when Malik Carter cleared his throat. Standing at the edge of the crowd, covered in sweat and grease, he looked almost out of place. A local mechanic from the nearby town, Malik was known to fix farm equipment, old trucks, and motorbikes. No degrees. No credentials. Just raw talent passed down from his father and honed with time. "I might be able to fix it," Malik said softly. Sarah turned, raised an eyebrow, and gave him a look that could melt steel. "You?" she scoffed. "This engine's smarter than most people. It's got triple redundant systems, encrypted firmware, a diagnostic AI." Before she could finish, Malik interrupted gently, "I know this engine. Not from books, but from living with machines like it." Someone in the crew laughed. Another said, "Let him try, what's the worst that can happen?" Sarah rolled her eyes dramatically, then smirked. "You know what?" she said loudly, half joking, half mocking. "If you fix this engine, I'll marry you." The crew erupted in laughter. Phones came out. Someone shouted, "You better put a ring in your toolbox, Malik." But Malik didn't laugh. He wiped his hands on a rag, stepped forward, and met her eyes with calm determination. "Deal." That one word silenced the laughter. Sarah blinked. "You're serious?" she said. "I don't play games with machines," he replied. Without another word, he knelt beside the engine. He didn't ask for help. Didn't reach for manuals or fancy gear. Just his tools, his instincts, and an understanding earned from years of listening to the language of broken machines. He pressed his ear to the housing. Tapped the fuel injector. Listened to the silence behind the cylinders. Then, he opened the wiring panel and began tracing the lines like a musician reading a symphony. Sarah watched, arms crossed, slowly dropping the smirk. Minutes turned into an hour. Malik found a fried sensor, bypassed it manually, rebalanced the fuel-air mix, and recalibrated the injectors one by one. Then came the final step, a tricky one. He needed to override the engine's diagnostic lockout, which no one had been able to crack. He pulled out a tiny jumper cable and connected two ports. "Try it now," he said. Sarah stepped forward. Everyone held their breath. She turned the ignition. The engine coughed, once, twice. Then roared to life. Like a sleeping giant, it came alive, gears spinning, power flowing. The crew cheered like it was a championship win. Malik stood, wiped his forehead, and looked Sarah dead in the eyes. "So, about that wedding?" Sarah never expected Malik to try. The engine wasn't just broken, it was a puzzle layered with encrypted firmware, digital firewalls, and precision hydraulics so sensitive they needed climate-controlled calibration. Sarah herself had worked on engines like this in simulation labs. Even she knew that fixing it without diagnostic software was near impossible. So when Malik rolled up his sleeves and walked toward the dead machine, Sarah crossed her arms and leaned against the steel frame of a nearby truck. A few workers snickered behind her. One whispered, "Man's about to get roasted by a computer." But Malik? He didn't even flinch. No hesitation. No swagger. Just focus. He gently placed his toolbox down, opened it, and pulled out worn tools, nothing fancy. A flathead screwdriver, a pair of pliers, an old voltmeter held together with electrical tape. Then, with the kind of calm you only earn through years of getting your hands dirty, he placed a palm on the side of the engine and just listened. Not with his ears, but with everything. His fingers traced the fuel lines like a pianist searching for a tune. He leaned in, tapping the housing, listening for subtle echoes most would miss. Then he opened the control panel and peered into the spaghetti of wires with the intensity of a surgeon. The sun climbed higher. The joking stopped. People who had been sipping water, scrolling phones, or waiting for the funny failure started getting quieter. Something was shifting. Malik wasn't throwing guesses. He wasn't fiddling around. He was diagnosing. He muttered to himself in rhythms no one understood. Fuel pressure's off by 5 psi. Solenoid relay stuck open. ECU might be locked in fail-safe mode. Sarah straightened up. This wasn't some glorified oil changer. This man knew what he was doing. Malik pulled out a pair of alligator clips and carefully connected them to the main harness. He bypassed the fried thermal sensor and used a custom voltage divider to simulate proper input back into the brain of the machine. Sarah's engineer mind couldn't help but lean closer. She furrowed her brow. "Wait," she whispered, "you're not guessing. You actually understand this." Malik didn't stop moving. Didn't look at her. He just said, softly, "You'd be surprised what you learn when no one believes in you." The crew was still now. Some of them were recording. The guy who had mocked Malik earlier stood with his hard hat in his hands, eyes wide. Sarah found herself beside him, involuntarily drawn into the scene. "You do this a lot?" she asked. Malik finally looked at her. Just for a second. "Machines speak. Most people don't listen." That answer hit her like a punch. He returned to work. Step by step, he recalibrated the timing manually using nothing but a timing light and his gut. He reprogrammed the injectors with analog pulses and mimicked combust commands using his own hand-built circuit. It was ridiculous. It was impossible. And yet, it was working. By the time the final bolt was tightened, Sarah wasn't smirking anymore. She was leaning forward, hanging on every movement. Malik didn't gloat. Didn't show off. He simply stood, wiped his hands on a rag, and nodded toward the cab. "Turn the key." Sarah looked at him, then the crew, then the machine. Her heart beat a little faster as she stepped up, placed her hand on the ignition switch, and paused. Click. The engine coughed once. Twice. Then let out a roar that shook the bolts in the scaffolding and sent a rush of warm air across the site. The crew erupted in disbelief. Sarah just stared at Malik, her mind racing. "Who are you?" she whispered. Malik gave her a smile. "Just a guy who listens." The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the construction site. A golden-orange glow bathed the steel skeletons of half-built structures. Dust hung in the air like smoke after battle. And in the center of it all stood Malik Carter, crouched beside a once-dead machine now wired and ready to breathe again. No one was talking anymore. The joking had died hours ago. The smirks had faded into awe. Even Sarah Morgan, calculated, logical, and borderline arrogant, was dead silent. Her clipboard now lay forgotten on a nearby crate. Malik rose slowly to his feet, his shirt soaked in sweat, hands blackened with grease. He didn't stretch. Didn't boast. He simply looked up at Sarah and said 3 words. "Start it now." There was a pause. She didn't move at first. Her hand hovered over the ignition like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She glanced at the crowd of workers standing around, phones in hand, wide-eyed and silent. Then, click. The engine coughed. Once. Then again. The kind of sputter that makes your chest tighten. And then, boom. A deep, throaty growl thundered from the machine. Pistons fired. Belts whirred. Exhaust blasted out the rear like a dragon's breath. The entire platform vibrated under its sheer power. Lights blinked alive on the dashboard. Gauges danced. A warning chime turned into a green light. It was alive. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then the site exploded with cheers. Men clapped each other on the back. Some threw their hard hats into the air. One of the younger workers shouted, "Yo, get this on TikTok," as he turned his phone around, capturing Malik's face against the glowing engine. Sarah stared at the panel in disbelief. Every warning was gone. The diagnostics showed perfect pressure, calibrated timing, and flawless response. This wasn't luck. This was mastery. She stepped down slowly, walking over to Malik as if in a dream. Her eyes scanned his work, clean connections, bypasses so elegantly done they looked OEM. A solution even she hadn't considered. And then she saw it. That same look. That quiet smile. The one he gave her when she mocked him. The one that said, "I don't need to prove anything, but I did anyway." Malik didn't raise his voice. Didn't try to make her feel small. He just wiped his hands on a dirty rag, looked her in the eyes, and asked. "So, about that wedding?" The crowd fell silent. More unexpected heroes, right here. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. The joke had come full circle. But now it wasn't funny. It was real. Sarah blinked. For once, words didn't come easy to her. The engineer, the planner, the woman who always had an answer, was speechless. She started, then laughed nervously, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I thought you were bluffing." "I wasn't." She looked around, every single eye on her. Workers. Supervisors. Even the site manager had come out of his office, eyebrows raised. Sarah took a deep breath. Walked a little closer. "You really fixed a military-grade engine with nothing but a screwdriver and a roll of tape," she said, half amused, half stunned. "Sometimes belief is the best tool," he replied. She laughed again, but this time it was soft. "Real." "Well, I said I'd marry you," she shrugged. "I guess I owe you at least a dinner." Malik smiled wide, held out his hand. "I'll take that. But make sure you bring the clipboard. I want to show you how I rewired your sensor logic without a single line of code." The crowd burst out laughing. Sarah rolled her eyes, but her smirk was now genuine. And in that moment, under the dying sun and the humming engine, something unexpected sparked, respect. And maybe, just maybe, something more. Sarah didn't say a word at first. Her mind was still trying to catch up with what her eyes had witnessed. The engine, the one she had deemed unfixable without advanced software and diagnostics, was purring like a lion. The crowd's cheers were still echoing, but all Sarah could hear was the memory of her own words. "If you fix this engine, I'll marry you." She had said it in jest. A sarcastic jab. But now? Now she was standing face to face with a man who had not only taken the challenge seriously, but had beaten the odds, proven her wrong, and done it with patience, skill, and humility. Then she laughed. Not a mocking laugh. Not the kind people use to cover up being wrong. It was genuine. From the heart. A mix of awe and admiration. "You actually did it," she said, shaking her head. Malik nodded calmly, wiping his hands one last time. "I told you I could." And it was true. He hadn't raised his voice, boasted, or begged for validation. He had just listened, to the engine, to the silence, to himself. And then he'd done what no one else could. The workers stood still, waiting. Was she going to keep her promise? Was this going viral? Sarah walked forward slowly, closing the gap between them. Then she extended her hand. "Then I owe you dinner," she said with a smile. Not a wedding yet, but dinner. The two shook hands. That moment, a simple handshake, became the start of something no one on that construction site could have predicted. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. Sarah found herself thinking about Malik more often than she admitted. At first, it was professional curiosity. How did someone without formal education understand such a complex engine? What else could he do? But it became more than that. They began talking, casually at first. He stopped by the site a few times, helping with other mechanical issues. She asked questions. He gave short, thoughtful answers. Soon those conversations moved beyond machines. They talked about dreams, Malik's dream of opening his own shop that trained youth from underserved neighborhoods. Sarah confessed she sometimes felt trapped by expectations, even with her decorated resume. Everyone thought she had it all figured out. He listened. She listened. And somewhere between toolboxes and takeout containers, they began breaking down something even more complicated than an engine: assumptions. Assumptions about people like Malik, that if you didn't wear a lab coat, you couldn't be brilliant. That if your hands were dirty, your mind must be too. Assumptions about people like Sarah. That if you were highly educated, you couldn't be humbled. That confidence always meant arrogance. They discovered a shared respect for machines, and for each other. One night, after sharing stories over late-night coffee, Sarah said quietly, "You know, that day. I didn't just misjudge the engine. I misjudged you." Malik smiled. "You're not the only one," he said. "People underestimate me all the time. But that's okay. I let my work speak." Sarah looked at him, nodded. Well, it spoke loud and clear. Their dinners became weekly. Weekly turned into almost daily. And what began as a joke, turned into a bond. It was no longer about the bet. No longer about proving who was smarter. It was about two people who met at the intersection of steel and soul, and realized that sometimes the strongest engines are built not with parts, but with patience, passion, and respect. Months passed. The construction project that brought Malik and Sarah together was completed ahead of schedule. And the V12 engine? Still running strong, no issues, no breakdowns. Just like the bond forming between two unlikely people who once stood on opposite sides of a joke. But now? Now they stood on equal ground. Sarah didn't just admire Malik's skill, she depended on it. And Malik didn't just fix machines anymore. He was co-leading projects, helping design mechanical systems, troubleshooting in ways that left even the most seasoned engineers speechless. That's when it happened. Sarah offered him a position. Not as a technician. Not as an intern. But as a partner. Malik hesitated at first. He was used to working solo, used to being overlooked. But this wasn't charity. This was recognition. She looked him in the eye and said, "You already do the job. You just deserve the title." So he accepted. Together, they formed a small but powerful engineering unit. One that combined Sarah's technical background with Malik's instinctive genius. They worked side by side, building machines, designing innovations, and mentoring interns from all walks of life. And yes, Sarah did marry him. But not because she lost a bet. She married him because she found something no degree or title could offer, a man with brilliance, humility, and heart. A man who didn't just fix engines, he fixed how she viewed the world. Their wedding was small. No grand ballroom, no media circus. Just a modest ceremony in the very same Texas town where it all started. Surrounded by the same crew that once laughed at the idea. Now they cheered. Some even teared up. Malik wore a custom suit with grease-black stitching on the cuffs. Sarah wore a white jumpsuit instead of a dress, practical, elegant, and true to herself. And in place of wedding bells, the V12 engine roared to life behind them. But the world wasn't done with their story yet. A bystander's video, capturing the exact moment Malik fixed the engine and said, "So, about that wedding?" made its way to social media. Someone added a dramatic caption. "The mechanic who won a wife with an engine." And the internet exploded. Millions watched. Articles were written. Reactions poured in. People debated. Cheered. Cried. Some called it the greatest love story to come out of a construction site. Others called it a lesson in never judging a book by its cover, or a man by his uniform. In every comment section, one phrase repeated over and over. "Skill speaks louder than a degree." And then came another. "Love sometimes starts with a bet, and ends with an engine." The video didn't just go viral, it changed lives. Young mechanics across the country began posting their own "Fix-It" challenges. Engineering schools invited Malik to speak. Students lined up to hear from a man who never sat in a classroom, but taught the world something no textbook could. Malik and Sarah used their spotlight to build something bigger, a scholarship fund for underprivileged kids pursuing engineering and trade careers. They called it the Fixers Foundation. Their message was simple. You don't need a title to be talented. You don't need a badge to be brilliant. You just need a chance. And so the story that began with laughter and ended in love kept echoing long after the dust settled. Not just as a viral clip, but as a reminder that true value isn't always written on a resume, it's revealed when no one's watching, under the hood, with grease on your hands and fire in your heart. And in the end, that engine didn't just power a construction site. It powered a legend. Hammer and wrench if this story moved you, taught you something, or simply made you believe in second chances. Speech balloon, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss stories that inspire, surprise, and stay with you. Movie Camera, more real stories. More raw truth.